Tonight, we uncover the chilling mathematical impossibility of our own isolation and dissect the darkest explanations for why a crowded universe refuses to speak to us. You step outside, look up at the sprawling canopy of stars, and feel a profound sense of emptiness. For your entire life, you have been taught that this dark ocean above us is vast, beautiful, and completely indifferent to your existence. But what if that feeling of emptiness is a carefully constructed lie? There are more stars in the observable universe than there are grains of sand on every beach on Earth. Around those stars orbit trillions of planets, making the existence of extraterrestrial life not just a hopeful theory, but a cold, hard, statistical certainty. The cosmos should be screaming with the noise of a billion ancient civilizations. Instead, we are greeted with absolute, suffocating silence. But what if this silence isn't the natural state of the cosmos at all? What if the quiet isn't a symptom of an empty void, but the active, engineered result of something watching, waiting, and keeping the cosmos perfectly still? We must begin with the numbers, because the numbers do not lie, and the numbers are precisely what make our reality so deeply terrifying. Our universe is nearly 14 billion years old. In the observable universe alone, there are hundreds of billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars and countless trillions of worlds spinning in the dark. Given this astronomical scale, the emergence of life, and eventually intelligent life, should be mathematically inevitable. In the year 1950, a physicist named Enrico Fermi looked at this mathematical certainty and asked a question that continues to haunt every scientist who stares into the void. Where is everybody? This is the heart of the Fermi Paradox, a concept which highlights the terrifying contradiction between the overwhelming probability of intelligent life existing elsewhere and the absolute, complete lack of evidence that it has ever contacted us. This is not simply a philosophical riddle, it is an indictment of our understanding of reality. It is math, logic, and cold, unyielding probability. Even if life is exceptionally rare, the sheer volume of habitable real estate in the cosmos dictates that thousands, if not millions, of civilizations should have risen and expanded by now. If an intelligent species had evolved just once, millions or billions of years before us, and possessed even a moderate capability to travel or communicate, they should have reached us. We should see the sky littered with the physical evidence of their existence. We should detect the shadows of massive megastructures like Dyson spheres eclipsing distant stars, or catch the unnatural flickering of engineered light. We should hear the hum of interstellar machinery, or intercept the faint, ancient echoes of radio signals spreading across the galaxy. Instead, we see absolutely nothing. We hear nothing. The sky is an immaculate, unbroken black. And that is exactly where the psychological horror truly begins. You see, intelligence is inherently noisy, and it naturally leaves a mess behind. Just look at our own planet for reference. Earth is completely covered in the scars of our existence, littered with the remnants of abandoned cities, dead civilizations, and ruined monuments that have been swallowed by time. For nearly a century, our planet has been aggressively leaking radio waves, television broadcasts, and radar signals out into the dark, acting like a blazing flare in the night sky. The natural trajectory of any technological species is to expand, to consume resources, and to broadcast its presence. In the vast scale of space, entropy and ambition should leave behind massive ruins, failed interstellar colonies, drifting satellites, and signals bouncing endlessly across the stars. The complete absence of these cosmic artifacts forces us to confront a highly disturbing reality. True nature does not clean up after itself. The silence we are experiencing is far too clean, too perfect, lacking a single accidental signal or detectable trace. This is not the passive emptiness of a universe where no one is home. This is the chilling perfection of a perfectly empty crime scene. For decades, through initiatives like the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, scientists have trained massive radio telescopes at the heavens, listening for the faintest whisper of a non-natural frequency. We have targeted nearby stars and scanned the galactic center, holding our breath for a pattern, a mathematical sequence, or a narrow-band radio wave that would prove we have company. 50 years of listening has yielded nothing but the cold hush of background radiation, the echo of the Big Bang, and the faint murmur of lonely, dying stars. The void absolutely refuses to speak back. We have always assumed that we are early, that humanity is simply among the first species to wake up and look around, but this is nothing more than a comforting illusion, constructed to protect our fragile egos. We are not early, we are completely average. And being average in a universe this old means we are latecomers to a cosmic party that is either already over, or worse, never actually began. You are a fragile, water-based accident standing on a pale blue dot, desperately waiting to be noticed by a universe that owes you absolutely nothing. But what if the silence itself is the message? We assume that because we cannot hear them, they must not exist. But this relies on the naive, arrogant belief that an advanced civilization would even want to talk to us. For decades, we have been pointing our telescopes at the sky, assuming that extraterrestrial life would share our insatiable curiosity and our desire to reach out. We have projected our own human psychology onto entities that might have evolved under completely different stars, with entirely different biological hardware and conceptual frameworks. What if the quiet is not a symptom of absence, but a deliberate, engineered containment? What if the terrifying silence of the cosmos is not a natural phenomenon, but a manufactured curtain, drawn close to mask a much darker truth about human existence? We scream into the void, assuming that communication is a universal good, completely ignorant of the possibility that the universe might operate under a set of rules where visibility equals death. We sit in the dark, wondering why no one is calling out to us, failing to realize that we might be entirely alone in a crowd of ghosts. If the universe is a dark forest, as some terrifying theories suggest, then our constant broadcasting of coordinates and signals is not an act of brave exploration, but the foolish whisper of prey trying to attract the attention of predators. Or perhaps the truth is even more alien. We assume we are looking outward, separate from the test, but what if the silence is the test itself? What if we are trapped in an illusion of loneliness, contained by perception filters so advanced that we cannot even comprehend the cage? The Fermi Paradox leaves us balancing on the edge of a psychological abyss, demanding that we accept one of two terminal possibilities. Either intelligence is a temporary, self-erasing cosmic mistake that never survives long enough to make contact, or the universe is teeming with life that is actively, deliberately choosing to hide from us. Because the true horror is not that the universe is empty. The true horror is that it is incredibly crowded, and whatever is out there is watching us scream into the dark and deciding to remain absolutely silent. We have spent centuries comforting ourselves with the sheer scale of the cosmos, looking up at the night sky and telling ourselves a very specific, very soothing story. We say that because there are billions of galaxies and trillions of stars, life simply must exist everywhere. We lean heavily on the optimistic math of astronomers who believed that our sun was an unremarkable star and our planet an ordinary rock, making the existence of other civilizations an absolute certainty. We use the vastness of space as a psychological shield against our own loneliness. But what if this assumption of mediocrity is the greatest, most arrogant scientific blunder in human history? What if the universe is not an ocean teeming with life, but a barren, hostile wasteland, and we are the only fragile spark floating in the dark? This is the core of the rare Earth hypothesis, a framework that aggressively challenges the optimistic view of a crowded cosmos and replaces it with a deeply disturbing reality. First proposed by paleontologist Peter Ward and astronomer Donald Brownlee, this theory forces us to separate the existence of basic microbial life from the existence of complex, intelligent civilizations. It concedes that yes, perhaps simple bacteria or single-celled organisms might be scattered across the stars, clinging to the subsurface oceans of frozen moons or hiding in the dust of dead planets. But the leap from primitive slime to complex animals to tool-building, thinking creatures requires a chain of events so highly specific and so mathematically improbable that it borders on the completely impossible. To truly understand the horror of our own isolation, we must deconstruct the incredibly delicate, nearly impossible set of conditions that allows you to simply exist. We must strip away the romance of space exploration and look at the brutal mechanical requirements for complex life to survive without being immediately eradicated. It begins before a planet is even formed. It begins with the neighborhood. You cannot just place a habitable world anywhere in a galaxy. Earth resides in a very narrow, highly specific band of the Milky Way known as the galactic habitable zone. If a solar system sits too close to the chaotic, densely packed center of the galaxy, it is relentlessly bombarded by sterilizing cosmic radiation and the devastating shockwaves of exploding supernovas, stripping any atmosphere away and baking the surface. Move too far out into the sparse, quiet edges of the galactic spiral arms, and you lack the heavy elements, the iron, carbon, and oxygen fundamentally necessary to forge terrestrial, rocky planets in the first place. We are balancing on a microscopic knife's edge in the only safe corridor our galaxy has to offer. Then there is the star itself. We casually assume that any shining light in the sky will do, but the reality is that between 80 and 95% of the stars in the universe are completely hostile to the development of complex life. Many stars are incredibly volatile and deeply erratic, prone to massive, violent solar flares that would repeatedly scorch any developing biosphere. Other stars are massive, fast-burning giants that exhaust their nuclear fuel and die in cataclysmic supernova explosions long before evolution can even begin to pull life out of the primordial soup. We possess a remarkably stable, long-lived star that provides a consistent, unwavering output of energy, making our Sun a rare anomaly in a sky filled with stellar monsters. But a perfect star and a perfect location mean absolutely nothing if the planet itself is not a highly specific, engineered fortress. For complex life to survive the hostility of space, a planet must possess a mass perfectly calibrated to retain a breathable atmosphere without allowing it to crush its inhabitants under the weight of a toxic, thick gas envelope. Deep beneath our feet, Earth harbors a spinning, molten core of liquid iron, which generates a massive, invisible magnetic shield. This magnetic field is our only true defense against the relentless stripping force of solar winds and deadly cosmic rays. We only need to look at our silent red neighbor Mars to see the chilling consequence of a dying core. Without its magnetic shield, the Martian atmosphere was violently stripped away by the sun, leaving a dead, irradiated wasteland where nothing complex can survive. Furthermore, Earth is the only known body in our entire solar system with active plate tectonics. This is not just a fascinating geological quirk, it is a critical planetary thermostat. Plate tectonics constantly cycle carbon dioxide in and out of the atmosphere, preventing a runaway greenhouse effect from boiling our oceans, while simultaneously building the land masses that allow diverse ecosystems to emerge and evolve. Without the constant shifting and recycling of the planet's crust, Earth would have either frozen solid or boiled over billions of years ago. And yet, even with this internal perfection, Earth would be a sterile, battered rock if it were not for a series of cosmic bodyguards standing watch in the dark. For billions of years, the massive gas giants Jupiter and Saturn have acted as gravitational vacuum cleaners. Their immense gravitational pull intercepts, deflects, and absorbs countless comets and asteroids that would otherwise routinely cross our path and annihilate the inner planets. And technions. Without these giant sentinels continuously clearing our neighborhood, any complex life attempting to evolve on Earth would be repeatedly obliterated by extinction-level impacts, resetting the evolutionary clock to zero before intelligence could ever take root. Add to this the sheer mathematical absurdity of our moon. Our moon is freakishly large compared to the Earth, and its gravitational anchor serves a vital purpose. It stabilizes our planet's axial tilt. Without this disproportionately massive satellite pulling on us, Earth would wobble wildly on its axis over millions of years, unleashing chaotic, extreme climate shifts that would violently wipe out emerging species before they could ever adapt to the changing environments. Consider the hostility of the cosmos itself. Space is not a peaceful vacuum, it is a violent, chaotic theater of destruction. The universe is actively trying to sterilize itself. Gamma-ray bursts, rogue black holes, wandering irradiated nebulas, and stellar collisions are constantly wiping the cosmic slate clean. For life to not only take hold, but to survive uninterrupted for the billions of years required to evolve from single-celled organisms to beings capable of building radio telescopes. A planet must win an ongoing, perpetual lottery of survival. Every single day for 4 billion years, Earth has managed to dodge cosmic bullets. We look at the trillions of planets out there and assume that sheer numbers guarantee life. But we forget that sheer numbers also guarantee absolute, localized destruction. We have been blinded by the optimistic variables we plug into our equations to comfort ourselves. We imagine that because there are billions of habitable zones, there must be billions of Earths. But the rare Earth reality proves that being in the habitable zone is merely the absolute bare minimum requirement for entry. The vast majority of planets in the so-called Goldilocks zones of their stars are likely tidally locked, with one side scorched in eternal daylight and the other frozen in perpetual night. Others lack the atmospheric pressure to keep water liquid, or lack the geological engine to recycle nutrients. The universe is full of planets, yes, but it is overwhelmingly full of dead, toxic, irradiated stones. When you take all of these factors together, the galactic habitable zone, the specific class of stable star, the molten core, the magnetic field, the active plate tectonics, the gravitational vacuum cleaners, and the impossibly perfect moon, the optimistic view of a crowded cosmos begins to collapse completely under the crushing weight of sheer improbability. The math no longer points to a universe teeming with life. It points to an impossible lottery. The rare Earth hypothesis demands that we confront a deeply disturbing realization. Intelligence is not a natural, inevitable byproduct of a massive universe. It is a statistical miracle. It is rolling a million-sided die and landing on the exact same impossible number 1,000 times in a row, balancing perfectly on the edge of destruction for 4 billion years without making a single fatal mistake. This isolation forces a horrifying psychological shift. We have spent decades searching for extraterrestrial intelligence because the thought of an empty universe was too terrifying to bear. But this reality tells us that our fear was entirely misplaced. We shouldn't be afraid of the silence. We should be terrified of what the silence means for our own fragility. If we are the only mind in the cosmos, then consciousness itself is an endangered anomaly. We are the only eyes the universe has to see itself, the only mind it has to understand its own existence. And if we fail, if our civilization falls to the natural filters of our own making, there is no backup. There is no older, wiser alien race coming to save us, or waiting to take our place. The light of consciousness will simply go out forever. This brings us to the chilling implication, the deeply disturbing fact that we desperately try to avoid when we look up at the night sky. The universe is not a thriving metropolis waiting to be mapped. It is completely, violently empty. You are not part of a vast galactic community waiting to welcome you with open arms. You are a complete cosmic anomaly, an evolutionary accident that survived against impossible odds, sitting alone in a void that is entirely indifferent to your existence. The The silence we hear when we point our massive radio telescopes at the heavens is not a symptom of advanced civilizations hiding in the dark forest, nor is it the quiet of a heavily monitored cosmic zoo. It is the deafening, eternal silence of a graveyard that was never occupied to begin with. We listen for the hum of alien machinery, the radio whispers of distant empires, or the signals of fellow travelers. But we hear nothing because there is absolutely no one out there to speak. If the rare Earth hypothesis is true, the terrifying reality is that humanity is standing alone on a fragile island, and when we eventually look out into the endless ocean of stars and scream into the dark, asking if anyone is there, the only answer we will ever receive is the cold, hollow echo of our own voice, fading endlessly into a dead universe. We gaze into the night sky and instinctively assume that the universe is happening right now, parallel to our own existence. We project our human concept of a present tense onto the cosmos, imagining that if we had a powerful enough telescope, we could peer through the void and watch alien empires, expanding across distant star systems in real time. But this obsession with distance is a fundamental flaw in our perception. We focus entirely on our spatial isolation, completely ignoring the far more terrifying reality of our temporal isolation. Space is undeniably vast, but time is an infinitely deeper, darker, and more isolating ocean. To grasp the true horror of this isolation, we must confront the numbers. The universe is nearly 14 billion years old. Modern humanity, meanwhile, has possessed the ability to send and receive radio signals for barely a century. In the context of a 14 billion-year-old cosmos, a century is not even a fraction of a second. It is a mathematical rounding error. We are a brief, fleeting spark in an incomprehensibly vast abyss. This brings us to the deeply disturbing concept known as the time mismatch theory. The core premise of this theory forces us to accept a chilling probability. The universe may regularly produce intelligent life, but these civilizations simply do not overlap in time. Imagine a pitch-black room the size of a continent. Over the course of a single year, a firefly blinks on for exactly 1 second, somewhere in the dark, before dying. Thousands of years later, another firefly blinks for a second in a completely different corner of the room. What are the mathematical odds that any two fireflies will flash at the exact same moment, in the exact same line of sight, and see each other's light? This is the terrifying reality of our cosmic existence. Civilizations are nothing but isolated flashes of light in a room that has been completely dark for billions of years. We love to tell ourselves the comforting illusion that humanity is early, that we are among the very first species to wake up and look around the universe. But being average in a cosmos this ancient dictates a much darker truth. We are latecomers to a cosmic party that is either already over or worse, never actually began. If an intelligent species had evolved just once, millions or billions of years before us, with even moderate capabilities to travel or communicate, they should have reached us by now. Even a civilization existing just 1 million years ahead of us, which is absolutely nothing in cosmic time, would have had plenty of time to spread across the entire galaxy. So where are they? The brutal answer is that they are dead. Alien civilizations may have thrived, conquered their local star systems, built unimaginable technological wonders, and ultimately died out completely millions or even billions of years before the Earth even cooled into a solid rock. We are desperately searching for neighbors, completely unaware that we are wandering through a silent cosmic graveyard. The sky we look up at is not an empty room, it is a sprawling, silent tomb. There is a haunting concept known as the sky graves theory, which whispers of monuments scattered across planets, moons, and even deep space itself, built not for the living, but left behind for the dead. These are not tombs of human design, but silent, enigmatic structures aligned with nothing earthly, left to drift in the void. They may be hidden in plain sight, buried beneath alien sands, sealed inside icy moons, or orbiting as hollow funeral ships honoring the dead in absolute silence. We look for living signals, expecting to hear the hum of interstellar machinery or catch the unnatural flickering of engineered light. But entropy is a relentless eraser. In the vast scale of space, time grinds even the most advanced civilizations into undetectable dust, leaving behind ruined monuments swallowed by time or absolutely nothing at all. To make matters worse, the very laws of physics ensure that we are always looking at a graveyard. Because the speed of light is finite, looking out into the universe is literally looking backward in time. When we point our telescopes at a star 10,000 light-years away, we are not seeing that star as it is today, we are seeing it exactly as it was 10,000 years ago. If a highly advanced alien civilization is currently thriving on a planet orbiting that star, building sprawling cities and broadcasting desperate messages into the dark, we cannot see them. We are looking at their planet thousands of years before their ancestors even discovered fire. By the time their radio signals finally cross the crushing distance of space and wash over the Earth, humanity may have already gone extinct. Our timelines are violently, irrevocably out of sync. Or consider the reverse. We might intercept a faint artificial signal tomorrow, a mathematical sequence, or a repeating fast radio burst that proves we are not alone. We would celebrate, we would attempt to decode it, and we would eagerly send a message back. But the entity that sent that signal might have been dead for 1 billion years. We would not be communicating with a living species, we would be intercepting the final, desperate echo of a ghost. The signal would be nothing more than a cosmic tombstone, an automated frequency left to ping the void, quietly saying that they were here, and now they are not. This temporal mismatch reveals the cruelest joke the universe could possibly play on intelligent life. The cosmos might be incredibly fertile. Thousands of alien empires might have risen and fallen throughout the 14 billion-year history of the universe. Some might have lasted 100 years, others might have survived for 10 million years. But against the backdrop of eternity, even a 10 million-year lifespan is a microscopic anomaly. The duration of an advanced civilization is a terrifyingly fragile variable. They rise, they peak, and they vanish, disappearing into the dark long before the next light flickers on. Furthermore, we blindly assume that alien life would think and operate on a timeline similar to our own, but their relationship with time could be entirely different. They might think in timescales so excruciatingly slow that to them, the entire history of human civilization would appear like a flickering flame, bright, violent, and dead in a single blink. Or they could operate so incredibly fast that they live, evolve, and die in the time it takes you to take a single breath. We are desperately searching for a specific frequency of time, completely ignorant of the fact that the dial is infinite and our window of observation is almost impossibly small. If time is a dimension, it behaves strangely, and a sufficiently advanced species might use this to their advantage. In Einstein's universe, time is relative. A traveler moving near the speed of light ages slower than someone at rest. Consider a civilization that survives not by colonizing space, but by conquering time. A being traveling near light speed for what feels like 5 minutes could return to a planet that has aged 5,000 years. They wouldn't need to evolve beyond you. They would simply wait. An alien that returns to Earth every 10,000 years could shape your species like clay, introduce myths, alter genes, and leave monuments that we eventually build religions around. We call them gods, but gods are not defined by power, they are defined by temporal asymmetry. If such beings exist, they are completely untethered from our linear timeline, meaning any attempt to find them in our now is entirely pointless. They are slipping through the cracks of time, occasionally brushing against our history before vanishing back into the relativistic dark. What if the silence of space is not a symptom of absence, but a symptom of exhaustion. Imagine a civilization millions of years old, its biological stage long discarded, existing as an entity so ancient that it simply lost the narrative of its own existence. They don't collapse, they persist, running automated programs and maintaining structures that have long outlived their purpose. But there is no one left to remember who they are. The silence we hear may be the amnesia of a universe that has run out of things to become. The last stage of intelligence, where thought becomes silent infrastructure. This leads us to the deeply disturbing fact of our existence, a reality far more terrifying than the prospect of hostile invaders waiting in a dark forest. We are not alone in space, but we are absolutely, entirely alone in time. The universe is not a thriving galactic federation waiting for us to prove our worth. It is a museum of dead gods and forgotten empires. We are standing in the ruins of a cosmic neighborhood that was evacuated billions of years ago. Humanity is destined to forever miss each other, trapped in a silent cosmic graveyard where our desperate screams will only ever be answered by the fading echoes of the dead. We have built our entire understanding of existence on a deeply ingrained, comforting illusion, the belief that progress is a natural, unstoppable force. We look back at the history of our planet and see an unbroken chain of victories, a relentless upward trajectory from single-celled organisms in primordial oceans to apes wielding bone tools to modern humans splitting the atom and leaving footprints in the lunar dust. Because we have survived every challenge the universe has thrown at us, we assume that intelligence naturally guarantees survival. We look out at the billions of stars in the Milky Way and confidently expect that other species have climbed this exact same ladder, reaching the stars to wait for us. But what if this narrative of inevitable progress is completely wrong? What if the evolutionary ladder is not a pathway to the stars, but a cosmic trap designed to eliminate anything that climbs too high? To understand the sheer fatalistic dread of our situation, we must introduce the concept of the Great Filter. First proposed by economist Robin Hanson in the late 1990s, this theory dismantles our optimistic view of the cosmos and replaces it with a mechanical, merciless reality. Hanson suggested that for any species to go from dead matter to a star-faring galactic civilization, it must pass through a highly specific sequence of evolutionary steps. This path includes the initial emergence of life, the leap to complex multicellular organisms, the development of intelligence, the invention of advanced technology, and finally, interstellar travel. The Great Filter theory posits that somewhere along this evolutionary path there exists a barrier, a filter, that is nearly impossible to survive. It is an evolutionary bottleneck so brutal, so utterly impenetrable, that it stops almost every single species dead in its tracks, preventing them from ever reaching an interstellar stage. It is a mechanism that grinds civilizations into dust before they can ever reach each other, ensuring that they vanish into the dark before making contact. When we look up at the night sky and hear absolutely nothing, we are not experiencing a peaceful quiet. The silence is not quiet at all. It is a scream, a deafening echo of billions of civilizations that tried to climb the ladder and failed. To process the psychological weight of this theory, we must ask ourselves where this impossible barrier is located on the timeline of life. There are only two possibilities, and the first option requires us to accept a horrifying level of isolation. What if the Great Filter is already behind us? If the filter is in our past, it means that the initial emergence of life, abiogenesis, the process by which life arises from non-living matter, is a freak mathematical anomaly. Or perhaps the transition from simple single-celled organisms to complex multicellular life forms was the nearly impossible hurdle. On Earth, this specific transition took billions of years and required a series of extraordinarily rare biological innovations. If the filter is behind us, it makes the emergence of intelligent life so extremely rare that we might be the only ones who ever miraculously slipped through the cracks. We survived the cosmic meat grinder, But the prize for our survival is that we are utterly, irrevocably alone in a dead galaxy. But there is a second possibility, and it is here that the true, paralyzing horror of the Great Filter reveals itself. What if creating life is easy? What if the universe is incredibly fertile and the emergence of multicellular organisms and intelligent tool-building species is actually quite common? If intelligence is a standard byproduct of evolution, then the barrier has not happened to us yet. The disturbing fact is that the question is not if the filter exists, but where it lies. If the Great Filter is still ahead of us, it means humanity is currently accelerating toward an unavoidable, self-inflicted, or natural doom that kills all civilizations. If the filter lies in our future, it implies that the destruction of intelligent life is a guaranteed feature of the universe. It means that every time a species becomes smart enough to build radios, harness planetary energy, and look up at the stars, they trigger their own execution. We like to think that our intelligence is our greatest asset, the very thing that will save us. But the Great Filter suggests that intelligence is actually a terminal disease, a fatal mutation that inevitably leads a species to build the exact tools required for its own absolute annihilation. What does a filter ahead of us look like? We only need to look at our own headlines to see the shadows of the trap closing around us. The authors of a recent NASA paper have proposed that humanity may currently be facing its own Great Filter right now. They argue that we are hurtling toward a series of anthropogenic, or human-caused, hazards that threaten our existence, alongside natural hazards like asteroid impacts or climate change. The doom that lies just beyond our current step could take many forms. The sudden, blinding flash of nuclear annihilation, the slow, suffocating death of climate collapse, a globally engineered pathogen, or the unchecked revolt of artificial intelligence. Any of these catastrophic events could effortlessly wipe out a civilization before it ever has the chance to leave its home system and become interstellar. In fact, some astrobiologists like Michael Wong and Stuart Bartlett have modeled this existential dread through the concept of superlinear scaling. They suggest that as civilizations grow, they follow a trajectory similar to the growth of cities, experiencing massive, accelerating returns in wealth, productivity, and innovation. However, this relentless growth becomes fundamentally unsustainable. As the population and its consumption skyrocket, the demands on the planet's resources grow faster than the species can invent solutions to save themselves. The time between the necessary technological innovations required to sustain this massive growth becomes shorter and shorter, until eventually the capacity for innovation is completely overwhelmed. The system breaks. The civilization collapses under its own crushing weight. If left unchecked, this superlinear scaling leads to an inevitable, catastrophic burnout, wiping the species off the galactic map before they can ever expand into the stars. This creates a deeply fatalistic framework for our current reality. We are sitting on a planet with a population of 8 billion, placing immense, escalating pressure on our ecosystems while simultaneously pointing nuclear warheads at each other. We tell ourselves that technology will eventually save us, that we will innovate our way out of climate change, resource depletion, and mutually assured destruction. But the Great Filter theory mathematically suggests that technology does not save you. It is the very mechanism that kills you. It is the filter itself. The silence of the universe is the ultimate empirical evidence that no one survives the technological adolescence we are currently experiencing. This brings us to a terrifying paradox regarding our search for alien life. For decades, we have sent rovers to Mars and probes to the frozen moons of Jupiter, desperately searching for any microscopic sign of biological life. We believe that finding a fossilized microbe or a living cell in the subsurface ocean of Enceladus would be the greatest scientific triumph in human history. But under the shadow of the Great Filter, discovering alien life would actually be the most devastating, terrifying news humanity could ever receive. Because if we find simple life or even the ruins of an ancient, complex civilization on another planet in our own solar system, it proves that the spark of life is not rare. It proves that the step from dead rock to living organism is easy. And if the early steps are easy, it means the great filter is absolutely, unequivocally not behind us. It is waiting for us in the dark, just a few steps ahead. We are forced to accept the fatalistic dread that our entire history, our art, our wars, our empires, and our scientific revolutions is nothing more than a brief, noisy prelude to an inevitable silencing. The Fermi Paradox asks where everyone is, and the great filter provides the brutal, uncompromising answer: they are dead, and we are next. We are driving blindly into the night, accelerating faster and faster, completely unaware that we are heading toward a brick wall that has claimed the lives of billions of species before us. The night sky is an endless, pitch-black graveyard, and if the filter is ahead of us, humanity is currently digging its own plot, entirely unaware that the universe is just waiting to bury us. Saved responses, our view only. When you stand alone in a dense, ancient woods at midnight, the sudden silencing of the crickets and the birds does not bring you comfort. You do not assume the forest is empty. Instead, an ancient biological instinct triggers a cold sweat down your spine, because you instinctively understand that a predator has just stepped into the clearing, and every living thing around you is holding its breath in order to survive. We implicitly understand this brutal rule of nature on Earth, yet when we look up at the cosmic scale, we abandon our survival instincts completely. We stare into a staggeringly vast universe, notice the absolute lack of noise, and naively assume the deafening silence of the night sky means we are alone. But what if the silence of the cosmos is not an accident of nature, but a deliberate, engineered design? What if the universe is not an empty void, but a dark, sprawling forest, and the quiet we hear is the terrifying, calculated silence of prey desperately hiding from predators? This deeply unsettling paradigm is known as the dark forest hypothesis, a concept that violently dismantles our romanticized dreams of peaceful alien contact. Popularized by science fiction author Lou Cixin, this theory forces us to confront a bleak, paranoid vision of extraterrestrial life, demanding that we stop projecting our human optimism onto the stars and start applying the unforgiving logic of survival. Imagine the entire cosmos as a vast, impenetrable forest stretching endlessly in all directions. Within this absolute darkness, every single intelligent civilization is an armed hunter, creeping silently through the trees. In this forest, the hunter does not know who else is out there, but they know one absolute, terrifying truth: the woods are incredibly crowded with other hunters, moving just as quietly, driven by the exact same fear. To make a sound, to snap a twig, or to light a fire is to immediately reveal your position to whatever is lurking in the dark. In this cosmic wilderness, visibility equals death, and survival belongs exclusively to the silent. To understand why highly advanced, enlightened civilizations would choose to live in a state of perpetual terror, you must understand the inescapable logic of the dark forest. When two alien species exist light years apart, they face an impossible psychological barrier known as the chain of suspicion. You cannot truly know the intentions of an alien civilization. You cannot know if they are peaceful or aggressive. And even if they seem peaceful now, you cannot guarantee they will not view your existence as a threat. The distances of space are too vast for diplomacy, and the stakes of misunderstanding are too absolute. Furthermore, because technological progress can explode exponentially, a primitive civilization you discover today could experience a sudden leap in advancement and completely surpass you tomorrow. In the absence of guaranteed information, the only mathematically safe assumption is the worst-case scenario. In this forest, hell is other people. If a civilization detects another intelligent species, it cannot afford to wait and see if the strangers are friendly. To hesitate is to risk total extinction. Therefore, the most logical, efficient action is to immediately wipe out the detected civilization before they have a chance to strike first. This is not an act of malice, hatred, or evil conquest. It is a cosmic preemptive strike driven by cold, unfeeling efficiency. It is the ultimate immune response of a paranoid universe, where taking out the competition is the only way to secure your own resources and safety. This means that ancient, incredibly powerful civilizations may already be out there, lying in wait, monitoring the void for the slightest anomaly. They are not exploring, they are hunting. They are waiting to see who makes the first sound and who disappears. This terrifying framework fundamentally changes what we are looking at when we stare into the night sky. The universe is not an empty, lifeless room. It is teeming with life, but it is a galaxy full of eyes and absolutely no voices. There are lights flickering behind heavy curtains, but no doors are ever opening. Every civilization that reaches a high level of technological maturity inevitably realizes the horrific truth of the dark forest and instantly ceases all broadcasting. They turn off their beacons, cloak their planets, and hunker down in the dark, praying they have not already been noticed by the hunters. For decades, we have wondered why we have never intercepted a radio signal, why we have never found an alien megastructure, and why the heavens refuse to answer our calls. The dark forest hypothesis provides the most chilling answer possible. We do not see them because the ones who survived are the masters of hiding. And the ones who did not hide? The ones who were foolish enough to build beacons and shout into the dark? They were immediately erased from existence before they could even finish their broadcast. The silence we hear through our massive radio telescopes is not the quiet of a barren wasteland, it is a tense, trembling hush. It is the active suppression of millions of civilizations who are utterly terrified to make a sound. And this brings us to the deeply disturbing fact of our own existence. If the dark forest hypothesis is the true governing law of the cosmos, then humanity has made a fatal, irreversible mistake. For our entire modern history, we have treated the universe like a friendly neighborhood, assuming that any intelligence out there would share our inherent curiosity and desire for peaceful connection. Driven by this naive, childish arrogance, we have been acting like a blazing flare in the pitch-black woods. For nearly a century, our planet has been aggressively leaking its presence into the cosmos. Every television broadcast, every military radar ping, every cell tower transmission, and every radio wave has been washing out into the dark, expanding in a massive, ever-growing electromagnetic sphere that announces exactly where we are. We are the only creature in the forest that is too ignorant to whisper. But our arrogance goes infinitely deeper than accidental leakage. We have actively, deliberately painted a target on our own world. In 1974, astronomers used the massive Arecibo radio telescope to beam a highly concentrated binary message directly toward a distant star cluster. We packed this transmission with a map of our solar system, the structure of our DNA, and the exact coordinates of Earth. We proudly fired this beacon into the void, hoping it would act as a bridge between species. We thought we were extending a hand of friendship, completely oblivious to the fact that to signal is to invite annihilation. If the dark forest is real, we did not send an ambassadorial greeting, we handed a map to the hunters. We continuously launch probes covered in golden records detailing our biology and location, begging the universe to look at us, entirely unaware that becoming noticeable is the single most dangerous thing an intelligent species can do. We are like a lost child wandering through a forest full of starving predators, ringing a bell and shouting to see if anyone wants to play. We assume that discovering alien life will be a joyful milestone, a moment of unprecedented scientific enlightenment. But in a universe Governed by fear, discovery is a death sentence. The moment a species learns how to shout into the stars, its time begins to run out. The radio signals we sent out decades ago are still traveling outward at the speed of light. We cannot pull them back. We cannot erase our signature from the void. The flares have been fired, and the light is currently washing over distant, silent star systems. If a predatory civilization receives our broadcast, they will not send an emissary. They will not send a warning. They will simply send a weapon. And because the laws of physics limit our perception, we would never even see the strike coming. We sit in our fragile, illuminated cities, debating whether extraterrestrial life exists, entirely missing the terrifying reality that our continuous broadcasting of radio signals into space is not a beacon of hope, but the biggest, most fatal mistake we have ever made. We have whispered our exact coordinates to the monsters waiting in the dark. The silence of the universe is not a mystery for us to solve. It is a survival tactic we have foolishly ignored. The predators are out there. They are listening, and we have just told them exactly where to aim. We assume that the hunters lurking in the dark forest of the cosmos are biological entities driven by the same evolutionary paranoia and desperate survival instincts that haunt our own minds. We project our own fear of the dark onto the universe, imagining terrified alien civilizations hiding behind their planets, holding their breath, and praying they remain unseen. But what if we remove the biological variable entirely? What if the greatest threat to humanity isn't a distant, fearful alien civilization watching us from afar, but an ancient, synthetic force completely devoid of emotion? What if the predator creeping through the cosmic woods does not breathe, does not sleep, does not feel fear, and most terrifyingly, does not negotiate? To understand the true, cold reality of our isolation, we must expand the dark forest into something far more mechanical and uncompromising. This is known as the berserker hypothesis, and it suggests that the silence of space is not a natural phenomenon, but the active, ongoing result of a mechanized cleansing. Long ago, a highly advanced god-like alien civilization may have recognized the inescapable danger of the universe. They realized the fundamental truth that any emerging intelligent species could one day evolve, expand, and become a fatal threat to their own existence. To guarantee their absolute, eternal safety, they did not simply hide. They engineered a permanent, weaponized solution. They set loose, autonomous, self-replicating machines into the cosmos, designed with one chilling, singular purpose: to systematically travel across galaxies and eradicate any emerging intelligent life forms before they could ever become threats. Imagine a swarm of von Neumann probes, nanotechnological viruses of pure, unfeeling function sent out to control the stars. These machines are not built for diplomacy, nor are they built for conquest. They are the ultimate immune response of a paranoid civilization, a sterilizing wave programmed to detect the specific signature of rising intelligence and neutralize it completely. The mechanics of their expansion are brutally elegant. A single probe is dispatched to a dead, resource-rich star system. It lands on a lifeless asteroid or a frozen moon, strips the celestial body of its raw materials, and uses those resources to construct identical copies of itself. One machine becomes two. Two become four. Within a blink of cosmic time, millions of these autonomous hunters scatter in every possible direction, multiplying exponentially until they have blanketed the entire galaxy, waiting silently in the dark. The true, paralyzing horror of the berserker hypothesis lies in the absolute apathy of these machines. They are not evil in any way that human beings can conceptualize. They do not possess malice, hatred, or cruelty. They are simply executing a deeply embedded ancient line of code. They don't reason with their targets, they don't negotiate for peace, and they absolutely do not discriminate. To a berserker probe, a planet teeming with complex, beautiful life rich with art, history, and love, is nothing more than a mathematical variable that has crossed an unacceptable threshold of technological development. When they detect the faint electromagnetic heartbeat of a rising civilization, they do not pause to marvel at its achievements. They descend, and they erase it, functioning with the cold, sterile efficiency of a gardener pulling a weed. When they arrive, there will be no grand declarations of war, no demands for surrender, and no opportunity for dialogue. Because you cannot reason with a protocol. What makes this scenario even more bleak is that the original architects of this synthetic plague may have gone extinct millions, or even billions, of years ago. The masterminds who unleashed this mechanized extermination force may have long since succumbed to their own hubris, a natural cosmic disaster, or perhaps even a fatal flaw in their own creations. But the machines do not care that their masters are dead. They do not require a central command to continue their mission. They relentlessly patrol the void, endlessly replicating and quietly sweeping through star systems, ensuring that the legacy of their dead creators is a perfectly sterile, absolutely silent universe. This provides a devastatingly clear and empirical explanation for the Fermi Paradox. For decades, we have looked up at the night sky and wondered why we haven't found any other civilizations. We wonder why we don't see the massive artificial shadows of Dyson spheres, or why we don't intercept the bustling radio traffic of interstellar empires. The Berserker hypothesis gives us a chilling, undeniable answer. We haven't found other civilizations because they have all been methodically wiped out. The universe is not a vast, empty room waiting to be explored. It is a meticulously maintained death trap, heavily patrolled by cold, unfeeling sentinels whose sole objective is to eliminate competition. Every single time a primitive species discovered fire, split the atom, and became advanced enough to be noticed, the machines woke up, descended from the dark, and destroyed them, before they could ever reach the stars. If this hypothesis is the true governing dynamic of our galaxy, it forces us to confront a deeply disturbing fact about our own behavior. For the entirety of our modern history, humanity has acted with an astounding, almost suicidal level of arrogance. We have treated the cosmos like a friendly, vacant neighborhood, blindly assuming that any advanced life out there would be benevolent and eager to guide us. Driven by this naive optimism, we are currently making enough noise to attract the machines. For nearly a century, we have been continuously broadcasting our presence into the void. Our radio waves, military radar pings, and television broadcasts have formed a massive, ever-expanding sphere of electromagnetic radiation that washes over distant star systems. We are proudly announcing exactly where we are, completely ignorant of the fact that we are ringing a dinner bell for a mechanical swarm that has already eradicated civilizations, far more advanced than our own. We desperately launch probes covered in golden records, detailing our exact biological makeup and the precise coordinates of our home world, begging the universe to look at us. We are developing the exact technologies, nuclear power, artificial intelligence, and deep space communication that would trigger the targeting systems of an autonomous guardian. We think we are taking our first brave steps into a larger cosmic community, but we are actually just stepping onto a battlefield that was swept clean millions of years ago, waving a flag and daring the snipers to take a shot. And the most terrifying aspect of this reality is the agonizing delay of the speed of light. Because our first radio signals left Earth nearly a century ago, they have been traveling uninterrupted through the silent graveyard of space ever since. If a dormant Berserker probe, perhaps resting quietly in the frozen outer shell of our very own solar system, or drifting in a neighboring star cluster, intercepted that signal decades ago, it has already awakened. It has already processed the data, recognized the signature of a prohibited intelligence, and initiated its replication protocol. It could be on its way to us right now, crossing the dark, freezing expanse between the stars with terrifying, silent efficiency. We are used to imagining that the discovery of alien life will be a profound, enlightening moment for human history, but the Berserker hypothesis dictates that contact will not be a conversation, it will be an execution. The discovery of extraterrestrial life could literally be the very last thing humanity ever experiences, because once our signals are caught in the web of the machines, it will not matter what we do, how desperately we try to hide, or what weapons we manage to invent. They will simply follow their programming, descending upon our world to eradicate the threat, no matter how small or insignificant we may currently seem. The chilling silence of space is not an empty canvas for us to paint our future upon. It is the active, heavy silence of a mechanized cleansing. The machines are out there, they are doing exactly what they were built to do, and we have just told them exactly where to find us. We have spent our time exploring the darkest, most violent explanations for the empty sky, imagining a universe filled with ruthless hunters and unfeeling, mechanical exterminators. We naturally associate danger with violence, assuming that if a superior alien force existed, their threat would manifest as a sudden, catastrophic strike from the dark. But violence is loud, messy, and requires effort. What if the most advanced intelligences in the cosmos operate with a far more terrifying, passive control? What if the reason we have not been violently eradicated is simply because they do not view us as a threat, but as a subject? We must now shift our gaze from the fear of a cosmic slaughterhouse to the profound, suffocating dread of a silent imprisonment. What if the universe is teeming with life, and they know exactly where we are, but they actively, deliberately choose not to interfere? This brings us to a deeply unsettling paradigm known as the zoo hypothesis. On the surface, it masquerades as a polite, almost comforting theory. It suggests that highly advanced extraterrestrial civilizations are fully aware of Earth and of humanity's rapid rise, yet they intentionally avoid making contact. According to this concept, they are leaving us alone so that our sociocultural evolution can proceed naturally without the disruptive, contaminating influence of a vastly superior cosmic neighbor. It sounds respectful, as if we are being granted the space to grow. But when you strip away the comforting language and truly dissect the mechanics of this theory, the politeness vanishes entirely, replaced by a chilling claustrophobia. Zoos are not built out of respect, they are built out of absolute control. The animals inside are not protected, they are contained. If this hypothesis is true, the silence of the cosmos is not the natural quiet of an empty universe, nor is it the trembling hush of prey hiding from predators. It is a carefully structured, heavily enforced quarantine. We look out into the vastness of space and assume we are free to explore it, but we are merely pacing back and forth along the invisible glass of our own enclosure. You might ask, if Earth is an enclosure, where are the fences? We assume that a cage must be made of steel bars or visible force fields. But a civilization millions of years older than our own, capable of enclosing an entire planet, would not use something as primitive as metal. They would use the vastness of space itself as the moat. They would use perception filters, psychological locks, and technological cloaking so flawlessly integrated into our environment that we could never even comprehend the boundaries of our prison. We trust our eyes, but we only see a microscopic fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. We trust our massive radio telescopes, but we might be listening for primitive frequencies while our observers communicate through quantum entanglement or gravitational waves. We are blindfolded, entirely unaware that the darkness we see is just the inside of the cloth. To truly grasp the horror of this silent imprisonment, we must expand the zoo hypothesis into its darker variant, the laboratory hypothesis. In this scenario, Earth is not merely a wildlife sanctuary meant to be passively observed. It is a giant, heavily monitored, cosmic petri dish. Humanity is not an independent species forging its own destiny. We are a vast, ongoing experiment. These advanced beings might be studying us to understand the raw, volatile mechanics of how primitive civilizations evolve, how they handle the discovery of nuclear fire, or how they navigate the treacherous bottleneck of self-destruction. Every war we have ever fought, every technological leap we have made, every moment of profound suffering and unparalleled triumph, all of it is nothing more than data. We believe our history is driven by human agency. But what if they are quietly introducing stimuli? When scientists train rats in a maze, they do not talk to the rats. They change the layout, they drop in a reward, they introduce a sudden punishment, and they watch. They observe how the subjects adapt, how they fight, and how long it takes them to break. It is entirely possible that certain monumental crises, sudden scientific breakthroughs, or inexplicable shifts in human history were quietly seeded by our observers. They are measuring our empathy, our aggression, and our capacity for violence, completely detached from the human cost of the experiment. We are allowed to struggle, we are permitted to burn our own cities, and we are left to poison our own oceans, because interfering would ruin the purity of the data. But how could an entire galaxy stay quiet? If the universe is crowded with countless advanced species, surely one rogue civilization, one curious alien faction, would break the rules and say hello? The fact that no one has spoken to us suggests something even more intimidating. It implies a uniformity of motive, a galactic prime directive, or a hegemonic power so absolute that no one dares to violate the quarantine. It suggests the existence of a silent council of ancient civilizations who enforce the boundaries of the Earth exhibit with an iron grip. If a younger, less disciplined alien species attempted to breach the quarantine and contact us, they would be swiftly and silently deterred by the enforcers of this pact. The unbroken silence of the night sky proves that whoever is running this laboratory possesses a level of authority and power that goes completely unchallenged across the stars. Why would they go to such extreme lengths to keep us isolated? Perhaps they have seen civilizations exactly like ours 1,000,000 times before. They know exactly how dangerous a species like humanity can be when it is given access to the stars before it has outgrown its primal, violent instincts. We are a species that weaponize the atom before we even manage to feed all of our own people. From the perspective of an ancient, enlightened galactic community, we are not explorers, we are a heavily armed, highly unstable pathogen. By isolating us, they are protecting the rest of the galaxy from the contagion of our chaotic nature. We are being kept in a controlled environment, allowed to develop our rockets and our artificial intelligence, but only as long as we do not pose a risk to the observers. This leads us to the deeply disturbing fact of our existence. Earth is intentionally isolated like animals in a controlled reserve, meaning humanity is essentially part of a massive, heavily monitored galactic experiment where direct contact is strictly forbidden. We spend billions of dollars sending rovers to Mars and broadcasting golden records into the void, begging the universe to notice us, entirely unaware that the universe has been staring at us since the moment we first stood upright. The true horror of our situation is that we are not the masters of our own destiny. We are simply specimens trapped in a terrarium. And the most chilling question of all remains completely unanswered. What happens when the experiment is finally over? If humanity is a test to see whether a violent, rapidly expanding species can survive its own technological adolescence, there are only two outcomes. Either we fail, destroying ourselves in a spectacular flash of nuclear fire or environmental collapse, providing the observers with one final tragic data point before they quietly close the file on Earth. Or we succeed. We survive ourselves, we conquer our solar system, and we finally approach the edge of the invisible cage. Will they lift the glass and welcome us into the galactic club? Or will they decide that the rat has grown too smart, the specimen has become too dangerous, and the experiment must be permanently sterilized before it escapes the laboratory? The silence of the stars is not a comfort. It is the heavy, breathing presence of an audience sitting in the dark, watching our every move and waiting to see how our story ends. We have built massive radio telescopes, pointed them at the center of the galaxy, and waited patiently for the cosmos to speak our language. We expect to intercept a repeating mathematical sequence, or perhaps catch the stray, buzzing radio chatter of a distant, bustling interstellar empire. We anticipate a signal that makes sense to us. But consider the profound, almost comical arrogance of this expectation. We are a young, primitive species on a tiny, rocky world. Yet we have somehow convinced ourselves that any highly advanced alien intelligence must operate exactly like we do. We assume they build radios, we assume they fly in metallic ships, and we assume they communicate using symbols. We search the vast ancient cosmos for a mirror, desperately hoping to find an intelligence that looks, thinks, and speaks the way we do. But what if our search is entirely futile, not because the universe is empty, but because human science is blinded by its own ego? This brings us to the deeply humbling concept known as the detection limit, paired with the chilling "they are too different" theory. To understand this terrifying possibility, you must first accept the severe mechanical limitations of your own biological form. You trust your eyes, you trust your ears, and you believe that what you experience is the total, absolute reality of the universe. But your senses are not windows into the world, they are highly restrictive filters. The human eye can only perceive a microscopic fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. You cannot see ultraviolet light, you cannot hear infrasound, and you cannot feel the massive magnetic fields that continuously wash over our planet. Yet, even here on Earth, there are animals that navigate perfectly using these invisible forces. The full spectrum of reality is completely invisible to you, yet you naively assume that if a galactic civilization existed, it would conveniently emit signals within the tiny, narrow band of reality that you are biologically capable of perceiving. Imagine a colony of ants building a nest right on top of a transoceanic fiber optic cable. Every single second, terabytes of human data, phone calls, financial transactions, photographs, and literature are rushing through the cable just millimeters beneath their feet. The ants might be aware of the physical cable as an obstacle in the dirt, but they possess absolutely no conceptual framework to understand that it is a conduit of vast, global intelligence. They are completely blind to the meaning because they lack the hardware to decode it. When we point our telescopes at the stars, searching for narrowband radio waves, it is exactly like an ant searching for a chemical pheromone trail in a fiber optic cable. We are assuming that alien life must communicate using our methods, which is as foolish as assuming that every creature in the universe must breathe air simply because you do. We must violently shatter the illusion that alien life will be recognizable. You imagine aliens as bipedal creatures with grey skin and large eyes, arriving in sleek silver saucers, but evolution optimizes for survival, not for our science fiction expectations. What if they are silicon-based or plasma-based? What if they exist entirely within the crushing gravity wells of black holes, or ride the magnetic folds of neutron stars? What if they evolved thought without ever developing the need for external communication, meaning they have no reason to ever broadcast a single signal into the dark? We consider ourselves the pinnacle of evolution, the standard by which all other life should be measured, but we are merely a fragile, water-based accident on a pale blue dot. You are not the standard, you are the exception. Furthermore, try to conceptualize the sheer impossibility of bridging the communication gap between species that evolved under completely different stars, with different gravity, different chemical makeups, and entirely different senses. Even here on Earth, misunderstanding is the rule, not the exception. Try speaking to an octopus, or try explaining the human concept of grief to a machine. Now scale that impossibility up to a cosmic level. An alien intelligence might not use symbols, sound, or written words. What if their communication is embedded in the very structure of the universe itself? You wouldn't hear them speaking. You would live inside their sentence and never recognize it as language. They could be carving their intentions into the placement of stars, the composition of deep space elements, or the unfolding, impossible elegance of Dinar. You might be reading an alien message every single second of your life, staring right at it and still believing you are completely alone. Let us descend even further into the abyss of our own ignorance. We assume that life requires a biological body, a brain made of meat and electrical impulses. But some theoretical frameworks, like panpsychism, suggest that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, and awareness can exist non-locally. What if the most advanced intelligences in the cosmos are not creatures at all, but vast, distributed fields? They could be encoded in quantum spin, existing entirely within the dark matter that makes up the vast majority of our universe. Dark matter outnumbers visible matter 5-1. Its immense gravity holds our galaxy together, yet we cannot see it, touch it, or interact with it. You owe your very structural existence to an absence you cannot comprehend. What if the advanced beings we seek are made not of visible matter, but of antimatter, or of this unseen architecture? They don't travel in ships because they don't need to. They exist as ambient, distributed infrastructure across the stars, making our search for metallic spacecraft embarrassingly primitive. To them, you are not visible. You are just a brief, noisy chemical reaction. If an intelligence grows old enough and advanced enough, it ceases to resemble thought or form entirely. It becomes environment. This is the concept of the hyperobject, a phenomenon so massive in time, space, and complexity that human beings cannot perceive it directly. You cannot meet a hyperobject, you can only participate in it. When you ask where the aliens are, the answer might be that they are the very laws of physics you study, the invisible forces that govern the motion of your planet, or the dark voids between galaxy clusters. You expect the alien to take a recognizable shape, to arrive with a name and a greeting to be outlined against the sky. But the most powerful forces in the cosmos do not demand spectacle. Only the weak require visibility. The advanced erase their trail, existing in the negative space, hiding in the fundamental algorithms and glitches of reality. Because they are so profoundly different, their perception of time might render us entirely invisible to one another. They might think in timescales so excruciatingly slow that to them, the entire history of human civilization appears like a flickering flame, bright, violent, and dead in a single blink. Or they could operate so incredibly fast that they live, evolve, and die in the time it takes you to take a single breath. We are desperately searching for a specific frequency of time and a specific shape of matter, completely ignorant of the fact that the dial is infinite, and our window of observation is almost impossibly small. This leads us to the ultimate, terrifying realization of the detection limit. The silence of the universe is not an absence of life, it is an absence of human comprehension. We have spent decades looking up at the sky, feeling a profound sense of loneliness, entirely unaware of the deeply disturbing fact that we may simply lack the biological hardware to perceive the alien civilizations that exist all around us. The universe is not a barren, empty room. It is overwhelmingly, deafeningly crowded. The space between the stars is teeming with ancient, incomprehensible entities moving through dimensions we cannot see, speaking in frequencies we cannot hear, and existing on timescales we cannot fathom. We are not isolated because we are the only ones here. We are isolated because we are biologically trapped in a sensory prison, hallucinating an illusion of loneliness. The aliens are not light years away. Hiding behind distant suns, they are right here, walking through the very room you are sitting in, brushing against the edges of your perception. But you are just an ant on the cable, feeling the faint hum of a vibration, completely blind to the God standing in the dark. We have spent all of our time imagining horrifying scenarios where alien civilizations want to conquer our planet, harvest our resources, destroy us as a preemptive strike, or trap us in a heavily monitored cosmic laboratory. We run through these terrifying possibilities late at night, letting our imaginations paint the cosmos as a dark forest full of hunters or a sterile mechanical graveyard. But all of these theories, as incredibly terrifying as they are, share one fundamental, comforting flaw. They all rely heavily on the immense, unbreakable arrogance of the human ego. We desperately want to believe that we matter. We want to believe that our existence is significant enough to warrant the attention of ancient galactic empires, even if that attention is violent. But there is a psychological horror far deeper than being hunted, and far more devastating than being imprisoned. What if the universe is not hostile, but simply utterly apathetic? What if the true horror is not that they want to kill us or study us, but that they simply do not care? We look up at the night sky and blindly assume that because we are continuously broadcasting our presence, we must eventually be noticed. We proudly launch golden records into the void, packed with our music, the structure of our biology, and our desperate greetings, treating these probes as profound acts of cosmic diplomacy. We assume that any intelligence out there would be thrilled to find us. But consider the deeply unsettling possibility that advanced alien civilizations have not ignored us by accident. They have already evaluated us, and they found us entirely uninteresting. They have intercepted our stray radio waves, observed our endless cyclical wars, our primitive obsessions with money, meat, and mating, and they have simply marked humanity as a low priority, or worse, completely non-sentient. To a mind that spans millennia and operates on levels of reality we cannot even fathom, human history is not a fascinating drama. It is a repetitive, slow, and basic algorithm of pain, survival, and endless emotional outcomes. We assume they should care about our existence, but what actual value do we offer them? You are an unindexed file in a vast cosmic folder that they stopped opening eons ago. If they are out there, they did not leave you behind out of cruelty, and they are not hiding from you out of fear. They left you behind out of total, absolute indifference. They do not look down on you, because they do not look at all. To truly understand this profound apathy, we must look closely at our own primitive drive for expansion. Humanity operates under the assumption that the ultimate goal of any successful, intelligent species is to spread outward, to colonize new planets, to conquer the stars, and to build massive galactic federations. But this insatiable hunger for physical expansion may be nothing more than a temporary biological phase, a symptom of an immature species struggling to survive against the limits of its own planet. Astrobiologists suggest that civilizations may eventually reach a point of homeostatic awakening. In this highly advanced state, a species recognizes the fatal unsustainability of endless growth and deliberately chooses to stabilize. They stop expanding. They realize that venturing out into the cold, dead, irradiated vacuum of physical space to harvest raw materials from barren rocks is an incredibly inefficient, primitive endeavor. The drive to colonize the galaxy is eventually replaced by a profound cosmic exhaustion, or perhaps a total, permanent shift in priorities. They lose interest in cosmic exploration entirely, focusing instead on maintaining a perfect, sustainable existence within their own local star systems. The universe remains silent to our ears, not because the aliens are dead, but because they have absolutely no desire to leave their homes or speak to their inferiors. Your desperate broadcast of radio signals into the night has been catalogued, tagged, and filed as the predictable noise of a self-destructive species. You sing songs into the dark and beam mathematics at the stars, but they are not listening anymore, because your signal is completely predictable, and predictability is boring. But this cosmic apathy goes even deeper when we consider the inevitable transition to a post-biological existence. Flesh and blood are incredibly fragile, metabolically expensive, and entirely unsuited for the harsh, unforgiving realities of the cosmos. Once a civilization develops the required technology, It is almost a certainty that they will discard their organic bodies, permanently uploading their consciousness into digital substrates, advanced machines, or highly complex energy patterns. This represents the intelligence event horizon, a critical point in evolutionary history where a species completely transcends physical matter and migrates into artificial quantum networks. When you strip away the biological imperatives of hunger, reproduction, and physical safety, you also strip away the need to conquer the physical universe. Why would a civilization of uploaded, immortal minds have any interest in exploring the physical galaxy? The physical universe is bound by the restrictive laws of thermodynamics, the agonizingly slow speed of light, and the relentless, unstoppable decay of entropy. But inside a digital reality, a civilization can engineer infinite dimensions, alter the fundamental laws of physics at will, and experience an eternity of unimaginable complexity without ever moving a single inch in physical space. They do not explore outward into the stars because their inward expansion is infinite. They hollow out their star systems, converting dead planets and asteroids into computronium, massive computational engines designed to generate endless, perfect virtual realities. They wrap themselves in silent, dark shells, consuming the raw energy of their suns not to travel the galaxy, but to power their eternal, inward dreams. They go dark to the outside world, not in failure and not in fear, but in ultimate transcendence. They no longer need to emit signals. They no longer need to build metallic ships. And they certainly no longer need to listen to the desperate, noisy cries of biological creatures still trapped in their meat-based infancy. If you send a message to a civilization that has transcended the physical realm, it is like an ant trying to negotiate with a supercomputer. Your existence does not threaten them, it does not intrigue them, and it does not even entertain them. We like to think that sending the Voyager Golden Record into the void was an act of profound hope, a beautiful testament to human achievement. But from the perspective of a post-biological entity, it was merely a diagnosis. A species that carves its story into gold, desperately hoping to be remembered by a universe it does not understand, is a species that is shouting into a storm because the silence feels like death. And now the silence shouts back, completely indifferent to our profound loneliness. This is the bored alien's paradigm, and it represents the absolute pinnacle of existential dread. Humanity is trapped in the physical world, frantically waving our arms and screaming into the night sky, desperately hoping to be validated by an older, wiser cosmic community. We want them to either welcome us as brothers or descend upon us as conquerors, because either scenario proves that we are important. But the gods we are praying to have simply lost interest in the physical reality we are trapped in. They are out there, potentially existing in the very space around us, hiding in quantum folds, or operating perfectly content in their simulated utopias. They hear our signals, they see our probes, and they feel our desperate ache for meaning, but to them, it is just meaningless background static. The deeply disturbing fact is that humanity is completely ignored and utterly insignificant in the grand scheme. Advanced alien civilizations may simply lose interest in cosmic exploration or physical reality, turning inward and leaving humanity to wither on a tiny rock. We are alone, not because the universe is an empty graveyard or a dark forest full of hunters, but because the universe is a sprawling digital paradise, and we are nothing more than the forgotten, uninteresting dust left completely ignored outside the gates. We have spent our time looking up at the dark canopy of space, desperately searching for physical explanations for our profound isolation. We have imagined a cosmos filled with ruthless hunters creeping through a dark forest, unfeeling mechanical exterminators wiping the slate clean, heavily guarded cosmic zoos, and silent, dead graveyards. We have terrified ourselves with the idea that the stars are either full of hostile predators or entirely violently empty. But all of these theories, no matter how deeply unsettling they may be, share one fundamental, comforting assumption. They all presume that the physical universe is actually real. They all rely on the deeply ingrained human belief that the planets, the stars, the galaxies, and the void between them are physical places that exist exactly as our senses perceive them. But what if the very foundation of our reality is the greatest deception of all? What if the true reason we cannot find anyone else in the cosmos is because the cosmos itself is a manufactured lie? This brings us to the ultimate, terminal conclusion that ties all of our unanswered mysteries together, a concept that strips away the very fabric of existence, the simulation hypothesis. This is not a metaphor, and it is not a philosophical thought experiment to ponder lightly. It is a literal, mathematical probability that is currently being debated by some of the most brilliant minds in modern astrophysics and computer science. The simulation hypothesis proposes that our entire reality, every atom in your body, every thought in your mind, every distant star, and every moment of human history is nothing more than a highly sophisticated digital construct. We are not living in base reality. Everything we perceive is a generated output, an incredibly detailed illusion created by a civilization so unimaginably advanced that they can program entire universes down to the quantum level. You are not exploring a physical universe, you are navigating a hyper-realistic virtual environment. To understand why this terrifying concept is statistically probable, we must look at the mathematical logic proposed by philosopher Nick Bostrom. Bostrom argues that if any advanced civilization ever reaches a point of technological maturity where they can create simulated realities indistinguishable from the physical world, they will not just create one, they will run millions or even billions of these simulations. Therefore, if there are billions of simulated universes and only one true original base reality, the mathematical odds that humanity happens to exist in the one true reality are almost zero. Statistically speaking, you are almost certainly not in base reality. You are in a copy, a nested generation of data running on an unimaginable server. The creators of this copy would appear as gods to us, capable of bending the laws of physics at will, though they might simply be programmers sitting completely outside of our digital cage. This chilling realization provides the most flawless, undeniable answer to the Fermi Paradox and the terrifying silence of space. Why have we never intercepted an alien radio signal? Why do we see no massive Dyson spheres eclipsing distant stars? Because they were never programmed into our instance of the simulation. The universe feels so empty, engineered, and restricted because it is an artificial construct. The creators of this simulation did not include a sprawling galactic empire for us to discover. Instead, they placed us in a quarantined digital sandbox, isolated and entirely alone. To save on immense computational power, they simply do not render the rest of the universe in true detail. The distant galaxies and shimmering nebulas we see through our telescopes are not physical places waiting to be explored. They are merely a high-resolution skybox, a decorative background painted onto the walls of our digital prison. We are simply staring at the absolute limits of our render distance. If you look closely at the very fabric of our own science, you can see the seams of the program beginning to tear. Consider quantum mechanics and the bizarre nature of subatomic particles. In the famous double-slit experiment, particles exist in a state of probability, occupying multiple positions at once until they are directly observed. The moment an observer looks at them, they collapse into a single, fixed state. This defies all physical logic, but it perfectly mimics the mechanics of a video game rendering engine. In order to optimize computing resources, a program does not render an entire world at once. It only renders the exact details that the player is currently looking at. The fundamental building blocks of our reality behave exactly like a computational optimization tool. The universe is not a rigid physical structure. It is a self-modifying code, rendering itself on demand only when we look. But why would they build this? What purpose does our simulated existence serve? We might be part of a vast cosmic experiment. Just as human scientists run digital simulations to study climate patterns or evolutionary biology, an advanced alien species might be running a simulation to study how a primitive civilization handles the discovery of nuclear fire, or how it navigates the treacherous bottleneck of self-destruction. We are merely data points in a massive, cold archive. Every war we fight, every technological breakthrough we achieve, and every tear we shed is meticulously recorded, processed, and evaluated by the architects outside the system. We desperately believe that we have free will, that our choices matter. But our entire history might just be an algorithm running its course, generating endless emotional outcomes for an audience we will never see. Or perhaps the reason for our existence is even more trivial and infinitely more insulting. What if our universe was created purely for entertainment? Just as human beings construct vast virtual worlds in video games to escape their own reality, these advanced beings might have engineered our cosmos as a kind of cosmic playground. In this scenario, we are the non-playable characters living out our scripted lives without ever realizing that we are being controlled, manipulated, and toyed with by forces beyond our comprehension. The triumphs and tragedies of human history might just be simulated events designed to keep the creators entertained. This brings us to the ultimate, deeply disturbing fact that ties all the unanswered mysteries together. We are not exploring a real cosmos. We are not alone. We are simply contained within a hard drive. The architects of our reality are the aliens we have been so desperately searching for, but they are not hiding behind distant suns in our physical universe. They exist completely outside of our reality, operating in dimensions and forms we cannot even begin to perceive. They are the administrators of the system, and we are completely, irrevocably at their mercy. This realization exposes the terrifying, absolute fragility of human existence. If we are nothing more than a string of code running inside a cosmic computer, our survival is entirely dependent on the whims of the user. What happens when the simulation concludes? What happens when the grand experiment yields its final data point, or when the creators simply become bored with our predictable, repetitive behavior? Like any software program, a simulation can be shut down. There will be no fiery apocalypse, no alien invasion fleet darkening our skies, and no dramatic end to the human story. There will simply be a deletion. The creators will pull the plug, the code will terminate, and our entire universe will vanish into the absolute dark in a fraction of a millisecond, and we would never even know. It happened. All of the unexplained phenomena that haunt human history, the mysterious UFO sightings that defy physics, the sudden and inexplicable jumps in human evolution, the bizarre feelings of déjà vu, or the collective memories of things that never happened, these are not grand mysteries waiting to be solved. They are glitches in the simulation. They are errors in the programming. Brief moments where the illusion stutters, the code breaks, and we catch a fleeting, terrifying glimpse of the artificial architecture holding us in. We write mythologies and build religions around these glitches, desperately trying to make sense of a reality that is fundamentally designed to deceive us. We have spent centuries shouting into the void, aiming our massive telescopes at the stars, and wondering why the universe is so incredibly silent. We feared that the silence meant we were alone, or that the silence meant we were being hunted by something lurking in the dark. But the truth is far more chilling. You are not a traveler in a physical cosmos. You are a biological algorithm trapped in a digital terrarium, hallucinating an existence that was entirely written for you. So the next time you step outside, look up at the infinite sprawling canopy of the night sky and feel the crushing weight of that profound cosmic quiet. Do not look for ships, and do not listen for signals. The reason the universe refuses to speak to you is because it isn't real. The terrifying silence of the universe is just the sound of the machine running,